I lost my brother when I was 8 years old. He was 18, he overdosed from heroin. You know, when I use alcohol or use drugs, I would use it to 100% capacity. Having your life up against the wall in a third world country, 40 hours of flying away from your family while COVID's locking down all borders, it puts everything into a different perspective. You know, there's a lot of questions from my kids when I'm packing up boards, and the first thing, are you gonna break your leg again? Or are you gonna die? Like, all these crazy questions. You know, those small moments of fear in heavy waves are the reason why I keep coming back. So yeah, we're actually coming up on, this is gonna be 3 years since my Morocco injury slash episode, life-changing experience. A lot's happened since then. You know, it happened right at the spike of COVID, and with competition being stopped, not only in surfing, but majority of sports around the world, there was a lot of questions with career, with what am I doing, with where am I going, and there's something inside of me that really wasn't, for sure I wanted to compete, but there's something inside of me that I just really wanted to find the joy of surfing again. I wanted to get back to those days of traveling around the world with my group of friends who are like the sickest surfers on earth, just charging, having fun, and enjoying the process, you know, enjoying missing flights, enjoying the layovers and the getting skunked, and just like getting back to the roots of how this all started. And since then, I've had some of the most monumental surf trips of my life. I was able to get, you know, a couple crazy sessions down in Tahiti, massive tow day. I was able to get a swell this last summer here in Hawaii on Maui, on Ma'alaia, which is like the mythical wave that hasn't broke in almost 20 years on my home island. To be able to surf that, some boat trips to the Mentawais. I was able to do like a real fun-based trip and testing some boards from Glen Pang that was supported by TNC, which was really cool for me. It wasn't a big wave trip. It wasn't a, you know, this chase. It was more so just enjoying surfing and having fun. And I feel like that's kind of been hidden for me in my aspect and what I've been looking at for the last few years. So yeah, just really traveling around the world, going to new places, going back to Morocco, just trying to find the love and find that feeling of fear that keeps bringing me back. As weird as it is, you know, those small moments of fear in heavy waves are the reason why I keep coming back. You know, I feel like I'm able to kind of leave myself and all my issues on land once the fear kicks in, and it's been a really cool couple of years. I can't imagine like not going through that injury or through that whole situation. It's really kind of been a blessing in disguise, and I wouldn't change it for anything. Not much was really understood until Morocco. And that's the truth. Like, for sure I've had stitches, you know, little bumps and bruises, ligaments here and there. But having your life up against the wall in a third world country, 40 hours of flying away from your family while COVID's locking down all borders into our country, it puts everything into a different perspective. And that changed a lot. It changed a lot, not only for myself, but for my family. You know, there's a lot of questions from my kids when I'm packing up boards, and the first thing, are you gonna break your leg again? Or are you gonna die? Like, all these crazy questions. And it's more so what I do at home, I think, is why they're able to understand it. They see the way I live. They see the changes I've made with health, with sobriety, just with training, with everything. It's not like a temporary camp leading up to an event. It's an everyday lifestyle. And those adjustments are what fueled, I think, the confidence in my family and understanding, like, this didn't happen because it was supposed to. It's just, this is what happens when you play with fire, with Mother Nature. You don't have control of it, and you just kind of got to roll with the punches. And you know, I was really lucky. I was in a really heavy situation, and I came out of it honestly as a better person with a better perspective. And my family learned a lot. For sure, they're definitely more concerned, and there's a lot more questions asked when I am traveling now and chasing swells. Sobriety came from, you know, I've been working with Kahea for, this will be 11th year, I think. I kind of always had to deal with him, like, through winter, you know, August, September, it's like, okay, no drinking, no partying, like, let's get the priorities in line. And I'd get, you know, through the XL Pro or the HIC Pro, whatever it is, into, you know, the Pipe Masters, the Triple Crown. Then we have these big nights, surfer pole, whatever it is, and I would just, like, fall off the hinges, and my winter would slowly decrease because of temporary feelings of getting high or being drunk. I don't believe I was addicted to anything but abuse problems. You know, when I use alcohol or use drugs, I would use it to 100% capacity. I wouldn't just, like, dabble. Like, when I go out at night, I would go out at night, and the night wouldn't end. And that's something that, you know, I thought was just normal. I looked up to surfers who were rock stars as a kid. You know, I lost my brother when I was 8 years old. He was 18, he overdosed from heroin. Like, for sure, I didn't think that was cool, but all my idols, you know, Andy, Uncle Derek Ho, like, these guys were rock stars. You know, they're living legends. They're like Jimi Hendrix of, you know, of our community. And 2019, I was in a place with people that really didn't mean much to me. And I was avoiding time from my kids and my wife, and I just knew that that lifestyle was not sustainable. And it was only a matter of time till it all left, and I would be there with nothing. And I just made a decision. One day I looked myself in the mirror to kind of walk away from drugs and alcohol. It was in August 2019. 2019 ended up being the craziest year of my life. I had an incredible run in the Triple Crown. I think I finaled at Sunset. Ended up winning the Jaws event. Got the barrel of my life, which ended up winning Ride of the Year at Jaws. I won the Sunset Open the first 2 weeks of 2020 and had a great showing at the Volcom Pipe Pro in January, and I got on a plane to Morocco in February. And, you know, a week later in Morocco, I ended up dealing with this injury, and I was 29 years old at the time. And April is when I was turning 30, and I just had made this this goal, like, you know what? I'll have a drink the day after my 30th birthday. Like, I never went through New Year's since I was 13 without being drunk or high on something. Like, every New Year's is a big blowout for me, my whole life, my whole teenage years. And then, okay, I got through New Year's, I was like, wow, this feels really good. I got injured, and that perspective of I want to go till April You know, that was only 2 months from when I got hurt. That led into, I got to get through my injury. And through my injury, I never looked back since. You know, it went from like, oh, I need to be sober for a few months to a year to, I don't know, now it'll be 4 years this summer, and there's no indication that I ever want to go back down that road. So there wasn't a reason for it. It was more so just understanding that, you know, life is really precious and this ain't gonna last forever, and the life I was living, it's not sustainable with a family. It's just not. I've had a pretty good couple of years since the injury. Like somewhat, you know, injury free. I've had a couple bumps and bruises, but nothing too serious until this winter. Coming into this winter, I kind of was like, I'd never felt so good. I didn't really have any injuries. I had nothing bothering me. I just felt like I was so far ahead of where I'd ever been, which was cool. You know, it's like sometimes you don't see progress for a long time, and you kind of just got to bite down and keep pushing forward, because at some point it will come through, and it came through this year. You know, I felt so good, so confident, just like itching for any swell, for any opportunity. And we had a really, really slow start to winter. You know, October, we always have our event out at Sunset Beach, and we had it this year, and it opened up at like knee-high Val's Reef, which is like the opposite of what you'll ever see me in a jersey. And you know, for sure, 2 years ago I was in the US Open, I did some of the Challenger Series event, and I love competing, 2 feet or 50 feet. But it was to be on the North Shore competing at Sunset Beach at Val's Reef in waist-high conditions was it was pretty shocking. And then the final day ended up being about shoulder high out at Sunset Point, and it was really fun. It kind of brought out the competitive like challenge of just not being in my comfort zone, where Sunset is a place when I put on a jersey, like I truly have so much connection out there with how much time I've put on, and it's rare. That's one of the hardest waves on planet Earth to be comfortable with. And I just grew up under guys like Kahea and Poncho, and I've learned so much from them along with Sonny that it's just made me feel at home. Winter was, you know, it was a really slow opening. Like I said, we had a couple fun days at Pipeline, and then going into the Pipe Masters, which was a new criteria that Vans put on, which was really cool. Kind of like a free surfing shootout format going into a competitive final, like leaderboard going into a final. I enjoyed it. It was really fun. Unfortunately, I missed the final by 1 spot, and going into the Pipe Masters, I had a pretty bad fall in that last heat of mine. Ended up getting slammed on the reef. I scorpioned and had a grade 2 MCL tear in my left knee. The knee opposite of the one I had reconstructed after my Morocco incident. So that was definitely like the first big red flag of the winter. You know, being injured, being sidelined in the middle of December, and I'm looking at the forecast, there's so much swell on the way. I wouldn't even say nervous, I was just scared. I was scared to miss opportunity because of how much work I'd put in. And luckily, I just have an incredible team of support behind me, from my family to my sponsors to my doctors. And yeah, I was able to get an MRI on it the day of the final day of the Pipe Masters. And next day, I was on my way to San Francisco to see my doctor, Mossy Reynolds, and he performed a bone marrow harvest stem cell treatment and a PRP injection into my left MCL. And You know, the doctors here in Hawaii kind of were telling me I'd be back in the water within 6 to 8 weeks, and within 10 days, 14 days, right? I think it was 2 weeks, right on 2 weeks, I was back out at Pipeline, and I felt great. You know, I just trust the process, listen to what Mossy says, and just don't stop moving. You know, I look really in detail to what I'm putting into my body as far as nutrition and supplements, and just a lot of time in the gym making those small adjustments and sacrifices to keep my body moving. And I kind of felt like I stepped right back into where I left off. Like I took like a 2-week break, and then boom, I was right back into it. And within a few days of being in the water, this swell popped up. They called the Eddy on, and I was tripping. The Eddie Aikau to me is the most prestigious event in my eyes in sports, any sport. There's no event that brings culture, community, and performance under one umbrella like the Eddy. The level of big wave riding, the reason of big wave riding, everything about it, you know, why we're out there, what we're doing. That event means so much to me, and I've never had the opportunity to surf in it. It's an event that only runs when the waves get to a certain height at Waimea, and Waimea is a hard wave to get swell into. And the last time it ran was 2006, and unfortunately I was an alternate that year and I didn't get in, and it burned. It really bothered me because I felt like I truly believed a spot in that lineup. And anyone who's close to me knows what the Eddy means to me. I lost my brother when I was 8 years old. My brother was at the forefront of professional surfing and big wave surfing. He was a town and country team rider at the time, and my last conversation with him was that he was going to be the first person from Maui standing on the podium of the Eddie Aikau Invitational, and that was his dream. He had a very bad injury right before he had passed away, and he told me he was going to be done kind of chasing the pro circuit of being a world tour surfer, and he wanted to focus on riding big waves and being in the Eddy. That was his dream. And moving to Oahu the year that he had passed and being introduced to what the Eddie Aikau big wave event is where I understood why he wanted that. What, like the reason, you know, 99 I sat in the circle, I watched the Eddy run, I watched Johnny Boy Gomes, Michael Ho, you know, Sonny, my peers, my idols, my heroes, and feeling the energy of that event at 9 years old, I immediately took my brother's dream and made it mine. And this year when they called the Eddy on, you know, I'm 2 weeks out of an MCL tear, and I'm just like, people are asking me, are you gonna surf it? And I was like, are you kidding me? I'll surf this event with one leg. Like, there's nothing in the world that'll stop me from competing and wearing an Eddie Aikau jersey. Unfortunately, 2 days later after they called it on, the swell, the conditions kind of started to fall apart, and they had to call it off. And fortunately, with that swell, with the winds being bad for the Eddy, it actually created perfect conditions on Maui at Jaws, and went back home to Maui and ended up having quite possibly the best day of big wave paddle surfing I've ever had. It was a really good feeling to kind of have that in my back pocket after being sidelined for a couple weeks with the MCL injury. It just brought a lot of confidence going into the backdoor shootout, which started 2 days later. Flew back home, straight back into the shootout. Shootout was pumping, it was huge, it was gnarly. It was you know, guts and glory and what the backdoor shootout's all about. You know, it's 10s or nothing. And had a couple good waves. In my second heat of the first day of the event, I just made a really bad decision on a wave and ended up wearing the entire lip of the wave on the back of my head, which drove my head face first into my board, knocking myself unconscious with a few stitches on the inside and outside of my mouth. That wave at pipe also strained my hamstring, and also I have a bulged C5, C6 in my spine, and it really lit that area up. Definitely a situation that was new to my family. I mean, I've never been pulled out of the water unconscious like that, and to have it happen at home in front of all my friends, all my family, my wife, my children, my sponsors, you know, it was rough. It took a toll, and the injury in Morocco was one thing. You know, I was on the other side of the world. They didn't know about it until I was in a hospital. Here, to see, you know, I can't really fathom it, but like my kids seeing their father, my wife seeing her husband unconscious on the beach at Pipeline, their emotions were connected because they were there in person. They've never seen me come out of the water unconscious. They've never seen me get rescued like that. And one of the first things I seen when I was on that stretcher, when they're giving me oxygen, I turned my head and I made eye contact with my son, Lion, who's 5 years old, screaming, you know, and I had some stitches. I was cut on my face, so there's blood everywhere. That look on a kid at 5 years old, like, that's not what you want to see. They look at me as strength and guidance, you know. They look at me as like their alpha, you know, the person who protects and provides. And that was rough. It really was. And I think it did affect them, but it kind of affected me possibly more so than them. Seeing them see that isn't what I want them to see. It's like, I want them to see, you know, the wins. I want them to see all the pros, you know, all the highlights. And they have been, you know, they've been to movie premieres, they've been to award shows, they've seen me winning contests, and that for them makes them, you know, feel proud. And I think them seeing me down and fighting, it's different. But I don't know, I believe at some point there's a reason for it all. You know, maybe it will give them more strength and give them more understanding and respect for the ocean, because when you're a young kid, you really don't know the possibilities. And I think now they're pretty familiar with what can happen, especially here on the North Shore. Yeah, it kind of just put me at a standstill again. It was like, I just felt like I couldn't get a break. MCL, I do all this work. I go to Cali, do stem cell treatments, PRP, ozone, physical therapy, just sacrifice after sacrifice, into boom, hitting my head, like dealing with a severe concussion, stitches in my face, tweaked my hip again. Like, everything just felt like it was not going in my way. And that really took a toll on me. And we've dealt with quite a bit this winter, and I just truly believe that, you know, nothing good in life comes easy. And I've been a living testament to that. And the next day, my best friend had a similar situation, but probably 10 times worse. Claude Grace took a fall out at Pipeline and was knocked out unconscious for minutes, rushed to the hospital. I was, I guess you could say, lucky enough to be in the ambulance with him and help him fight his way back to life. He straight up beat life. You know, he was against all odds, and the only reason that I believe that he was able to pull through was because of his sacrifice he made. Like, I talked to the nurses at Queens, and they said every 5 to 10 years they have a situation like him. Like, have your oxygen levels in your brain below, they put you on oxygen in a hospital once you go to 91%. When your brain's taking 91% of the oxygen, they put you on synthetic oxygen. And he was in his 60s on the whole ambulance ride to Queens. I was in the ambulance, we lost him 3 times. 2 minutes to Queens, he flatlined all the way till we got him into trauma. And the nurses told me, like, you know, this kid must be beyond healthy. And I was like, is like a couple years into being very healthy, and they're like, yeah, this is like not 1 in 100, it's like more like 1 in 200 you see this, and that was pretty crazy. That to me was really a shocking couple of days. I kind of just felt like I blacked out for 3 days, and I was sitting out under the banyan tree outside of Queens Hospital waiting for them to take him out of sedation. He was in an induced coma, and they were going to see if he could breathe on his own. And as I'm waiting outside with a few of his family members and our best friends, I'm getting texts about the JAWS event and the Eddie being possibly called on for the following, I think it was Sunday. And this is like Tuesday, Wednesday, and I'm just like, geez, I couldn't even read these texts. I couldn't even look at a forecast. I was so emotionally just drained and connected to making sure my best friend was gonna come home alive. I literally hadn't even checked in on myself. I had like 3 doctor's appointments, CT scan, EEG scanning for my brain, MRI on my spine, MRI on my left knee to just check and make sure everything. I did not go to 1 appointment Monday or Tuesday because of Kalaw's situation. And once he was, kind of discharged and we realized that he was gonna make a full recovery, I on Wednesday morning woke up here at my house and just kind of checked in with myself and realized I could barely even spell my own name, let alone like carry a conversation and have a consistent, normal speech. Everything was broken up. My brain was pulling me from opposite ends. Light was piercing me, and I was just really nauseous, and it was something I've never dealt with. And knowing that this concussion had been going on for a few days now was really scary. And also with the thoughts of the Eddie and JAWS being possibly called on, I was really fortunate enough to be teamed up with Wave Neuro, some brain doctors who are the best in the world. Shane Dorian, Albie Lair, and Koa Smith all connected me to Fred and James, and they immediately scheduled all the scannings on my brain. Shane gave me his at-home unit. They created, these doctors and scientists created a protocol for my exact injury, for what my brain was, what it shown on the EEG scanning. And there was a lot of like low tempo energy in the frontal side, the frontier of my brain. On the scanning, you could see basically I was at like almost a sleep state through the entire day. So that's where all the slurred speech, the nausea, like really irritable, like there's just so many little things, that's where it was all coming from. And they immediately created this protocol, and I just went all in with it. I was sleeping 8 hours a night in my hyperbaric chamber. I was doing 2 to 3 brain sessions a day. I was in the gym just eating directly towards like neuro progress, helping my brain, connecting all the neurons. And within 72 hours, I felt like every day I was jumping about 25%. And by Friday, I felt pretty damn good. And I was starting to get asked, are you gonna surf the Eddie? Because Eddie was getting called on. JAWS got called off, it was gonna be too big. And we're looking at 50 to 60 foot face waves for the Eddie. It's no joke coming out of a concussion. It's one thing to think about surfing Waimea. It's another thing to think about surfing Waimea, the biggest it's ever been. I'd have to be dead to not show up at the Eddie. And then it became like this conversation with my wife and my family, like, what's going on with your brain? Like, before you just go throw yourself back in the fire, can we at least have like some sort of peace of mind that you're not gonna come out of this if you fall into a vegetable? Like, that's the possibilities. I have friends who have hit their head out at pipe and drowned. They're in wheelchairs, they're vegetables still, and it's really unfortunate. A few MRIs later, I got cleared literally the night before by my doctor, like, hey, you're not at risk, like, be careful as much as you can be, but you deserved this. Go out there and let it shine. And that to me was like, to be able to look my family in their eyes and tell them like I got this, like, let's go. Like, it was the craziest few weeks of my entire life. I've been through worse injuries, I've lost the most important people in my life, but what I overcame and what I went through in those few weeks was something that I never in my entire life thought was gonna happen. From my neck to my brain to my left knee, there was kind of quite a bit of obstacles going on. It was hard to deal with, but just knowing the prestige and how special that event was, it took a lot of the pain and a lot of the nerves away from just even thinking I had an injury. You know, I thought I was gonna lead up into the Eddie feeling the strongest, most disciplined and prepped I've ever been. By no means was that the case. I made it by a thread, but I just look back at everything I've went through, watching my mom fight cancer, watching my brother lose life to drugs, my best friends, you know, Morocco injury, just so many different things that have tried to push me in a direction of life that I didn't let happen. Just used it all as motivation and inspiration, just kind of like a roadmap to victory. The day the Bay called it was gonna be the most important day of my life. Yeah, you know, honestly, after I hit my head at pipe and I watched my best friend fight for his life, I probably would have just told you, I think I'm gonna just sit back. You know, I think my winters came to an end. I just seen everything get taken away from me like that. The flash of life happened. And I was starting to get asked, are you gonna surf the Eddie? Because Eddie was getting called on. We're looking at 50 to 60 foot face waves for the Eddie. One of the biggest swells we've ever seen in my life. And being rewarded with the Eddie, I think the mental and spiritual effect of that, what that event did to me, it just changed my outlook on everything. You know, my winter is not over. Those are just temporary feelings of watching your best friend's life be taken away and then him fighting for it back and my own life flashing in front of my eyes. You know, it's one thing to think about surfing Waimea. It's another thing to think about surfing Waimea, the biggest it's ever been. And I told myself I wasn't gonna miss this event. You know, I'd have to be dead to not show up at the Eddie. And the level of big wave riding, the reason of big wave riding, everything about it, you know, why we're out there, what we're doing, that event means so much to me. Yeah, driving down there was crazy that morning. I live in Pubakea, which is less than a mile to Waimea, and we sat for 45 minutes in traffic trying to get to Waimea. It was locked off. Get down to Waimea and it's like every big wave brother I have, you know. And these aren't just normal people, you know. The people who had surfboards in Waimea in that grass field that morning, they're different, you know. They're cut from a different cloth. And to be in that group was such an honor. Maybe one of the most, you know, warming feelings in the world to look around at my peers. To look on my first heat, I had Michael Ho. It's like a second father to me. You know, he's 65 years old. He surfed in the Bay with Eddie. He surfed all 10 events. And him telling me that morning, this is my last dance, this is my last day at the Bay, I was like, I get to share this with you. I mean, the book was wrote that day. Everything I wanted and everything I dreamed of, every box was checked that day, that morning, before I even paddled out. Just knowing the event was on, you know, hopping up. We couldn't even see the ocean because of how many people there was, and I'd hear people start screaming. I'd jump onto the top of my truck and look out, and I'd just see the whole bay just go poof. I've seen waves break from the peak at Waimea to the left side of the bay and meet up with each other. I've never seen the whole bay stand up and just clap one time. You know, for the waves to be at that magnitude, I mean, it's the biggest swell I've ever seen, straight up. You know, I've never seen that before. And what was really weird is there was never a moment of fear the whole day. There's never a moment of second guessing. Knowing my brain situation, my body, where I was at, the night before, I had a lot of nerves going to sleep. I was super nervous. I was like scared how I was gonna feel if I hit my head. I wasn't sharp the way I normally am. Like my determination and where my mind's at, the mindset wasn't there. And I feel like when I'm in a jersey, I hold a big advantage over a lot of my competitors because of where I can get my mind and my discipline, my sacrifices. I just feel like I have a really strong mind and belief, and that wasn't really there that morning, which kind of scared me. And I kind of just, I went with the flow, and I just told myself, I can't look back and I can't look forward. And if there's ever an opportunity to just let it all go, be present, and live in the moment, this was that day. One moment that really stood out for me was I tried to take off on, to me, what looked like the biggest wave of the day so far in my first heat. And it was a complete closeout set, and I kind of airdropped, but I caught my fins and I thought I had it. Ended up going over, getting pounded at the peak. Luke Shepardson was on the wave behind, which was a 10. Took that wave on the head along with probably, I don't know, 8 other 50-foot walls of water coming at me on my head almost all the way to the beach. Ended up jumping on the jet ski, and it was so big in the shore break where they picked me up that they couldn't escape, so we had to beach the ski. And they spin the jet ski around, they're deflating my air. There's literally 10 minutes left in the heat. And I just looked around for a moment, and I felt like I was in a flow state, and I could just feel this energy just erupting. As I got on the quad, I turned my head, and I seen my kids with all of the water patrol, my wife, everyone just screaming. And it just like, that moment, I felt like I just left my body, just like, rah, like everything that I went to leading up. Even though I didn't make that huge wave, I just felt like so much, like that was the start of the event for me right there. I was like, it's on. Zipped me back down, got me on the skis, zoomed me out. It happened within 5 minutes. And next thing I know, I'm just flying down this huge wall of water, and there's a smooth wave. And I remember going over the boil, my fins just humming. And it exploded, and I came through the white water, which is kind of like the ideal ride for Waimea. And I seen the bay was closing out, and I was like, oh my God, this is like, the childhood dream is to ride the big bomb out at Waimea and just pull into this crazy shore break section. And as I was coming to the shore break, I put my hands up in the air, and I just heard the crowd erupting. Like I felt like I could almost hear voices of my friends and my family. Yeah, it was so emotional. I rode that wave all the way and got washed up the beach, and the heat was over, and I just stood there on the beach, and I don't know, I just remember, I don't know why I looked up at the sky. I don't know why I made those decisions. Like, I don't remember any of them, but I just remember like this feeling of looking into the sky, and everyone who I've lost, everyone who I have, like everyone, I just felt connected to the universe right there. Like I just felt so alive in the moment. I've never felt like that in my life. I felt looking into the sky spiritually, mentally, physically, everything in the world right there. It just felt like it was meant to be. When you have people cheering for you, it just means you're doing something right in life. And it's been probably my biggest goal is to have people on my side, because if there's no one on your side, you're just not doing life right. And that feeling I got from that day is the reason why I left the beach with such a big smile, so grateful, so happy. And at the end of that day, like the support and the energy that was in the bay was a validation to me in my personal career that I've accomplished what I've wanted to.